Hi everyone. We can finally start this last session of the day with the DSA BoF. So Tollef and Héctor are here to talk to us about their work and I guess open the conversation about it. So thanks.
Yeah, so welcome to the annual Meet the DSA BoF. It's just Héctor and me here this year. We're hoping to run this as a slightly interactive conversation, so that if there is at any point people want to ask questions or do something, then give a hand and we'll run with mics. We start. So DSA consists of 9 people, 8 people. We're distributed around the globe. There's most of us are in Europe, but there are some provinces in Australia and Luca is in Canada. So we do actually have people in most time, or cover most time zones. We are a
So what we do is maintain the basic core services of Debian to run Debian, and so we maintain an LDAP database where all the accounts are created, removed, and we administer the machines owned by Debian, so those are kept secure and with reliable networks. They're operational and keep running them. Coordinate with local teams, the local admins that are on data centers, which are trusted data centers. We have several of those around the globe, like UBC in University British Columbia in Canada. We have some in Germany. We have in GRNet, in MIT. So we have Canova. We have different data centers which Debian developers are working there, and we kind of trust them. But having like a new data center added, it needs a bit of work. We really, people ask, oh, we set up this machine, can this be DSA? We prefer to have the hardware and host it in our own trusted data centers. So we also grant developers enough access, enough rights so they can run their services. Not root in machines, we don't like that, but we just give whatever they need at a user level. We don't run the services. We run some of the core services, but most services are run by other people, by teams. Usually we prefer to have two people responsible for a service. So in case one is not available, then another one can take care of it. And because services have in the past have been set up and they've been running, and then the main maintainer disappears, and no one knows how to run this service. So we don't like to have a machine idle with rotten information. Then we maintain the Debian machine usage policy, which is how we want people to use machines. Like some people having ideas, yeah, we want to use porter boxes with as GitLab runners, or let's build daemons attached to GitLab runner and things like that. That's probably not compliant with this policy. And then there's other people, well, all these kind of rules to use the Debian machines. And there are tools and software we use. There's a mirror in Salsa. Here you have the URL. So if you want to contribute, there's a Puppet Master, Nagios, well, the configurations, the email.
This presentation.
So you can find it all there. So if you want to contribute to DSA, you can just get a patch into this code.
But as it says, it's a mirror. So if you do want to send us patches, please send them as email. Don't try to do much requests because our master copy is actually elsewhere. Yeah.
Okay, what DSA doesn't do, we don't do the disposable VMs like a VA. We use Ganeti and take us a lot of effort to set up a VM. So we kind of like to have long time running services rather than have no, I want a VM to test this thing and I'm not going to use it in the. So it's not a good place for DSA to ask for disposable VMs. It's not a hosting service. You can upload and host some stuff, but it's not like you want to upload a gallery of pictures into DSA machine. There are other better places suitable for that. And we have partners and people running services, cloud providers that should be able to provide that. Like, for example, we recently added in Salsa ARM64 runners, but those are sponsored by Packet.net, which is a cloud provider that approached us. And it's not suitable to run trusted Debian services, but it's suitable to run CI or other services can use these cloud services and all these disposable machines and so on. So we don't run the services in general. We just have the email and the basic services that Debian runs. Like we are few people and we cannot rule all the Debian services. So.
There's a lot of them, so yeah.
Yeah, well, there's been ongoing refreshes. We got a couple Dell machines. One went to Manda, I believe. I'm not sure the other one went to Canova or other data center. We bought, this is the first time we're buying hardware, so we welcome hardware contributors to help Debian. You can get in contact with us if you have machines that you want to donate, or we usually like to have a warranty on the machines, service packs, and then we got new ARM build demons at UBC, University of British Columbia, such in Quasar machines with a lot of cores. And we just received a donation for MIPS machines that are not yet set up, so we're working on getting those set up so we can keep up with the MIPS ports. No, I don't know where they are at the moment.
The MIPS hardware? I can't remember.
Yeah, they arrived. I'm not sure where.
Yeah. So we're working on a few things. It's the usual infrastructure maintenance and refreshes. I mean, that's kind of ongoing. We have a lot of actual physical hardware, and we try to have that under warranty wherever that's possible. It's hard for some of the non-mainstream architectures because it's not like you can actually buy all of these things. But for anything that's AMD 64 and moving towards also being the case for ARM64, we try to actually have stuff under warranty. There's been some larger scale attacks on open source infrastructure in the last year and before. So we're working a bit on improving our security. It goes from some of the work which isn't core to what DSA does, but is important to Debian, like some of the secure boot and ensuring we have signing infrastructure for that, but also ensuring that access to our porter boxes and so on is secure. So there are some changes which are going to come there. I'm looking at doing two-factor auth, hopefully in a way which doesn't end up with people being too inconvenienced by that, because I mean we want people to be able to use these systems, so it's not not just dial the security up to 11. That's kind of easy, but also would lead to systems not being useful. So there's always the balance between having good enough security, but at the same time not having it be too inconvenient to use. There was a thread earlier on Debian Devel a month or two back about what we're seeing is that mailing lists are increasingly difficult in today's internet. A lot of the large email providers are throwing away email if you don't add some of the security / anti-spam features to them. At the same time, we have a challenge because we don't really want to run a email service for every single DD. Not every single DD would even use it. But trying to come up with a good solution where we actually get our email delivered to the people we're trying to send it to at the same time as having something which doesn't require too much manpower on the DSA side. We spent some time on service management, and by that I mean Debian runs so many services. It takes a while. It takes actual effort to coordinate with service owners and making sure that the interface between DSA and the various services is well defined and understood. Also, I think we want to move towards something which is a bit more flexible than what we currently have. Right now, if you want to do development of Debian services, like if you're not the service owner and you want to develop on some service, if you want to fix something on packages Debian.org, or you want to fix something on bugs Debian.org, that's kind of hard to do. For bugs, yeah, you can rsync down the entire bugs pool and set up bugs yourself, and that creates a pretty high barrier to entry. So trying to figure out how can we run our services in a way where we actually get something which is a bit closer to what best practices are, where people actually have development and staging and production environments. Lastly, we have an infinite, well, not infinite, but it feels sometimes infinite amount of work to do. So we're trying to recruit a little bit, but of course the problem here is that how do you recruit well for something which actually has so much access? Access in Unix in general is kind of binary. Either you have root or you don't have root, and we'd like to find a good way of onboarding people without necessarily giving them all the permissions from day one. A little bit like, say, the FTP team with their trainee setup. The release team, I think, has something similar. Trying to figure out what does that look like? What can we do there? That kind of also ties into the service management, in that we use Puppet for automation. And if you can then commit to Puppet, you can make any change on any host, which is, kind of dangerous to just give out. So if you have ideas, or also if you're interested in helping out, then absolutely do contact us, which neatly brings us on to how to get in touch with us. We have 2 mailing lists. There's one which includes various local admins, such as Steve here. But of course also DSA. There's the DSA at Debian.org, which is just the Debian admins. We are around on IRC. Generally, you get an answer there pretty quickly, at least in the European daytime. RT Debian.org is open to all DDs. The password is under the Debian user on master. And input on the various tickets in the queue there, absolutely helpful. So yeah, how to help, it's the usual: send patches, help us test stuff, be helpful in IRC, improve our docs. So yeah.
Questions and answers. So there's a comment from Holger in IRC, like he wants to advertise. Yeah, he wants to advertise the Debian infrastructure announce mailing list. So usually when we have new machines or we retire hardware, it's announced so you can follow what are the changes going on through Debian infrastructure announce mailing list. So now we are open to questions and discussions.
Thanks. I want you to announce that mailing list more often, because I think many people don't know the list. So if you write your usual bits to Debian Devil announce, include the information that this list exists. That was my comment.
Okay, yeah, we make a note.
First, thank you for your work, and then at least one question. When you say, actually, that's more a curiosity. When you say that you want warranty for Debian machines, what does it mean?
It means that whenever something breaks, be it a fan or a hard drive or a main board or a power supply or whatever, we can actually call the supplier and go, hello, the power supply is broken, and they ship it out to the data center. And if sometimes they want the broken part in return, sometimes they don't care. But essentially that we don't need to go ask our data center operators at some university somewhere in the world to go, oh, can you go out and buy this piece of equipment for us and fill in this form and be reimbursed by SPI in a month? Because that makes the job of being a local admin a lot harder. I mean, Steve does this, but and also you run a bunch of the machines which aren't under warranty, and I mean, it's a lot more faff than what we would like. We would like to be as nice as possible to our hosting providers, and it's a lot easier if we can go, here's, like, please expect a box with this hard drive, please replace hard drive number 4 in that piece of equipment. So that, I mean, that's why, and also kind of how the mechanics work. But I mean, for some of these architectures, you can't really get that because they're dev boards. They're weird, essentially.
So from IRC, we got Thomas Lange asking if Debian, they had a BoF on Debian Life, and they discuss about pointing to bigger ISO install images, install the net installer, and if there are any concerns from DSA.
I don't think that's a question for DSA because we don't really. Our CD hosting is generally being donated by the University of Umeå in Sweden, and largely run by Maswan, who used to be a student there and now works there. So they really like when we use lots of bandwidth because it gives them an excuse to get more bandwidth, so we can use more bandwidth.
Yeah, so we already have all of our released CD, DVD, live, USB, cloud images already mirrored. It shouldn't really make much difference. As you say, and Umeå were very, very happy when we hit them with like 15 gigabits of traffic or whatever it was. I think it was 15 gigabits on release day. I might be wrong. It might be. I might be out by an order of magnitude these days, but they're genuinely happy, as you say.
Yeah, and 15 gigabits, it's a lot to kind of you and me. But as I used to work for a company that pushes multiple percent of the internet's world traffic, and 15 gigabits isn't actually very much traffic on today's internet.
Sure, it used to be, but these days Netflix do that without noticing, for example.
Yeah.
So I'm interested to see you talking about doing stuff about email, because I know that's been a bugbear for a lot of people for a long time. Can you expand on that slightly? Sorry, I know that's a hard one, but I'm genuinely interested as to what your ideas are.
So I think that what we need to do is we need to provide people with a way of sending email through Debian, or to be able to at least DKIM sign mails. There is that particular mechanism is DNS-based, so you can actually essentially provision a key per DD, and you would then sign using that, and that would be discoverable through DNS. But whether that means that we should actually also turn up some of the policy statements that you're doing with DMARC, for instance, I don't know. I feel like we can't really do that on a per email basis. So I'd like to get to the point where we first have the ability for people to actually sign their mails before we start saying anything about what our policy is going to be, because I don't want to run a relay for every single DD who are then going to that would be complicated. And also there's been some people asking if we could run an IMAP service, and I don't really want to do that, because then it's, suddenly somebody gets a ton of mail or creates a mail loop, and it can very easily end up with consuming too much resources.
Yeah, no, I was thinking maybe a smart host, but no IMAP.
Yeah.
I mean, will DKIM scale to maybe 2,000 different email setups with signing and stuff with DNS, or I genuinely, I've never played with it.
I think it should. I don't see any reason why it shouldn't. I mean, sure, it will be a fairly large zone, but that's not really a big deal. So I think that would work, but I mean, I need to play more with it, both on my, so I'm also playing with it on my personal domain, and kind of trying to figure out what it's going to look like. And this might also lead to us doing more enforcement of DKIM and DMARC on incoming mail, which would hopefully then lead to less spam, because that is a concern that I mean, there are our current spam handling is not where it should be. I mean, it's and if there's somebody who really knows about these things and cares about these things, then absolutely more help would be very helpful. Our XIM config is somewhat convoluted and causes small and large children to cry, but it's kind of complex, but at the same time it's actually possible to reason about once you spend some time with it. And I'm probably the person who knows it best at this point, and I'm very happy to walk through it with people if they actually want to help out with fixing stuff. So don't just do a git clone and look at it and go, and then run away. If you're actually interested, then come talk to me and we can figure something out.
So as a DM, what would be the easiest way to get my my feet wet working with the DSA?
That's part of our problem, right? It's hard to. So we wouldn't accept somebody into DSA proper before they're a DD, because at that point you have root. So I mean, it becomes a trivial escalation path to become DD. So we wouldn't, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be able to help out.
Yeah, you can still help out, look in the.
No, we can't look at the tickets.
The Git.
Yeah.
Get the mirrors, and then hang out on the channel, IRC channel, and just whatever your skill set is, and if you find improvements, then just point to those, and that's always helpful to do.
What are your interests is what I'd kind of turn the question to be.
Okay, so I've been working as a sysadmin for 10 years now, and I've also been combating mail issues, so I'd be interested to help out on that.
Okay.
So, yeah.
That would be really, really welcome. So just hang out on the IRC and
Yeah, come grab us and we'll figure something out, essentially.
Yeah.
Because having more people who understand and is able to change the config and maintain that would be very, very, very helpful.
Hello.
Hello.
So I didn't say it before. Thanks for your work. I'm very happy for your work. And this is the topic I brought up in conversations before. I would like more DSA work for PO parts. Because this discussion yesterday where you want me to set up some cloud at some providers for running PO parts slave. I think PO parts is in such important service for Debian that I would like DSA to run these slaves. And where do you set the distinction between important service for Debian and where not?
You like DSA to run the slave or run the slave on a DSA maintained machines?
I like to run the slaves on a DSA maintained machine. We have AMD 64 slaves running on DSA maintained machines since 10 years. You install software updates and that's it as far as I see, which I'm very happy you do, and it's part of the things I don't want to do, because PO parts maintenance, the service is enough work, so I don't want to care about the underlying system. And I think PO parts is important for Debian, as all the testing migration relies on it. We find bugs in unstable, etc. So I think I want it on a reliable service and not something which goes down very quickly, or which can go down.
Mm.
And that's about new architectures in this case, but
yeah, I hear the need. So PO parts is it's uncomfortable because it actually needs to run as root. Because for those who don't know, it does package installation and upgrading and so on. So it genuinely needs root, which makes it more uncomfortable to run than kind of in a security, from a security point of view, than to run in other services. So I don't really have a good answer to you offhand, but at the same time, it's something which I at least would need to think more about kind of what's the right answer here, because I absolutely agree that it's an important service for Debian, so it's not that.
And I agree that's a proper requirement to say, if you say it should not use root, it should use containers then, or whatever.
Yeah, so that's something I would really like to move towards, for if we had a better way of doing essentially being popularized as elastic workloads. So when there's a lot of when PO parts needs to test a lot of packages, it can actually do that when it's kind of done.
PO parts has constant workload, so there is hardly a difference.
Okay, so it doesn't vary?
It does vary a bit if there's many packages upload, but there's still, we test continuously all packages, so there's packages are being retested so that they're always basically running on full CPU load.
Okay.
Or full I/O load, it's rather I/O.
But yeah, also making sure that whatever the testing environment is throwaway as possible, right? So ideally, we would throw away the worker nodes at least after a certain number of runs, if not on every run. I mean, what's a reasonable resource consumption there?
Yeah. Gets into the the PO parts problem that it's not really well maintained, or many people actively developing on it.
So again, I'll say thanks to you guys. You do a lot of work. I know I'm probably one of the heaviest users of your services. What with image production, image hosting, the wiki, and a whole bunch of other stuff. You're mostly a pleasure to work with. I understand when things get stressful. So thank you very much for being responsive and being helpful. I mean, even this week, for other people's benefit, I've spoken to Tollef, and he's done upgrades for me, and he's responded to our T-tickets, even while busy at a DebConf. So that's going above and beyond. Thank you very much. I'm sure I'll have plenty more to ask you for in future.
Oh, sure. And, you know, that's absolutely welcome. I mean, the work we're doing isn't very useful unless there are actually consuming services, right?
Actually, one thing I will ask right now, I mean, I could ask in IRC and probably will anyway, as when and if I get some more proper, nice, big ARM64 server boxes, where would you like them?
We need to see a location where we have a space in a rack and figure it out when they arrive. You know how big, how many users?
The one I'm thinking of is 2U. Reasonable amount of power, but not horrendous. And you know, to run as build these or a porter box.
And where is it coming from, or where?
I don't know where it might be coming from. So you know, it can be delivered anywhere in the world. It's just it's up to you guys. Where would you like me to host? I'm assuming you're not going to want. Well, I don't want to concentrate any more services at ARM in Cambridge because that would be bad for redundancy reasons.
Maybe, yeah, maybe Canova, maybe UBC, Canada. Could be in Europe and US, OSU, OSL. Or Canada, so
okay, cool.
Depends. We'll figure it out when they arrive.
Yeah, sure, definitely. I was just curious if you had any ideas now, but yeah, obviously we can work it out.
No.
Is there something we're not doing that you'd like us to do? This is not, you know, I'm not promising anything, but are there might very well be blind spot within what we're doing or not doing that we kind of should do?
You do sound healthy. I think you've covered it. The one I was going to mention, if you hadn't already, was going to be mail. It's an obvious one. Lots of people are asking about.
Yeah, and I mean, it's something where we just need to explore a bit more, but at the same time, I'd rather not. Our mail setup is convoluted enough because it does contain some gems which were, you know, nice 20 years ago and which we haven't really gotten rid of because there are 5 people using them and there are 5 nice people. So it's the... but yeah, trying to figure out how to actually be a responsible citizen, but also somebody who gets their mail delivered on today's internet. Because there are a lot of really, really large players, and they say these are the rules, and if you don't conform to that, then it's kind of too bad for you.
Do we need to talk to Gmail, really?
So right now, if you send email from a Debian org address to Gmail, it will default go into spam.
Because of the DKIM is not working?
Yeah, so the question was because DKIM isn't working. Yeah, essentially that's why. It's not set up, and there's a lot of spam which goes through Debian.org, which means that the reputation for Debian org mail is fairly low. And I mean, this is not because Google hates us. This is because there are automated systems here. And if we want to change that, either we change our behavior or we go find some of the DDs we know at Google who are hopefully close enough to be able to poke the automatic algorithm. But it's actually easier probably to fix our setup, because then we don't have to do the same thing for all the other providers.
Sure.
And a lot of spam is going through Debian.org because of mailing lists, or also other things?
it's my experience is that a lot of it is not from mailing lists. A lot of it is from being sent through Debian org addresses, and then a bunch of DDs will forward their email to Gmail because that's what they use for their personal mail.
Okay.
And that means that Gmail sees there's a lot of email coming either from or to Debian org addresses, which is spam, which means that the reputation goes down. And today's deliverability of email in today's internet is essentially a reputation game. It's that you need to behave properly for some period of time, and then increasingly your deliverability will go up. But it's also built for corporations, which tend to use centralized mail setups where all the email goes through a single choke point, and that's not really what we want to do in Debian. Still have a couple of minutes, if anybody have more questions or comments. Doesn't look like it. So thank you for coming. Thank you for questions.